Well, it's official. Josh Eilert will not be the head basketball coach at West Virginia next season, and there will be a national search for the next coach, and Wren Baker has spoken. What did he talk about? Paul and I are going to discuss that on this live edition of Hoops from the Hills. My name is Couz.
And I am Mountaineer Paul.
And we present to you
Hoops from the Hills.
What is up? We are live. I guess you could call this an emergency episode of Hoops from the Hills. Got a lot to talk about today. We had Wren Baker came out today, gave a 30-minute press conference, allowed the media to ask questions about the coaching search. Obviously, even before that, a few hours before that, Wren Baker made an official announcement about Josh Eilert, which we're going to share on the screen for you real quick. But before we get into that, though, let's go ahead and give a quick shout-out to our channel sponsor.
This episode of Hoops from the Hills is brought to you by Dutch Miller Automotive, where friends and family pricing means you get the best deal right up front on any new or pre-loved vehicle in stock every time.
With brands like Chevrolet, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Kia, Hyundai, Ford, GMC, Buick, and Subaru, the Dutch Miller Automotive family is always growing and ready to put you in the car or truck you've been searching for.
Check out our inventory across West Virginia at DutchMillerAuto.com, or you can come in person today to the home of friends and family pricing, only at a Dutch Miller Automotive store near you.
All right. That is the shout out to our sponsor, Dutch Miller Automotive. I want to give a thanks to Chris Miller, who's the president over there, and all of his staff. They have been super to work with. So go see them for your next automotive purchase or service needs. All right. I'm going to enlarge this a little bit because that's not really showing up well on the screen. There we go. Here's the announcement from West Virginia University about the coaching search this morning. Came out this morning. I don't think that helped any, did it? Did that make it any bigger?
Yeah, a little bit. Not
Okay.
much.
All right. It says, this is from Wren Baker. As I shared last summer following our initial coaching transition, we decided to wait until the conclusion of the 2023-24 season before embarking on a full national search. Upon our return to Morgantown from the Big 12 Men's Basketball Championship, I met with Coach Eilert, the coaching staff, and the team to let them know we are moving forward with our search plans. All of Mountaineer Nation owes a debt of gratitude to Coach Eilert for his leadership during a challenging season as he and his staff faced all obstacles with class and professionalism. We are now focused on our collective future, and I am excited about what comes next. We compete in the best men's basketball conference in America. We have incredible fans and supporters. We have a history of success, and we have a commitment to winning. I am confident we will engage a strong pool of candidates and identify the right leader for our program. As I shared with our student athletes, we will move deliberately, but as swiftly as we can in the days ahead. Again, that's Wren Baker, Vice President and Director of Athletics at West Virginia University. Now, Coach Eilert put out a statement after that, which we're not going to read because it is really long, but he basically was thanking Mountaineer Nation for the support throughout the season, talking about how he does not regret taking the job at all, how he learned a lot from it. But one thing I picked up on, Paul, and I want to get your thoughts on this. Josh Eilert used the word hate, talking about the hate that they got at times and used the word negativity. He threw that in there a couple of different times. So I think he does still have a little bit of a chip on his shoulder for the disrespect and some of the naysayers out there. But so I want you to give your thoughts on that and then just about this situation in general.
Well, a lot of people are being affected by this. It's not just Josh Eilert. And similarly, just not only Josh Eilert has to deal with the ramifications. Everybody's losing their job as far as we know. And most of the players are probably moving on. So there's a lot of people being displaced by this, first and foremost. And I want to give them my thanks, Eilert included, all those guys. I think anytime you're in the public space, we deal with it here, Couz, when people give you hate, or even sometimes just a little bit of negativity. If you don't have thick enough skin, it can get to you. And I could not imagine being in the situation he was in this year. You just think your entire world and life revolves around being a coach. You probably dreamed of getting this opportunity, and then when you get it, it's the worst of circumstances, literally ever. So there's just so much bittersweetness. People talk about the financial part of that. And yeah, $1.5 million is great. And his family certainly is set up for the future. Probably, if he didn't work, probably still 10 years. But I'm sure he wants to go on to bigger and better things and wanted his career to be more than what it has on this. But as far as the talking about the hate goes, I mean, he can use that to fuel him. It was there. Fans were frustrated at the end of the day, and I don't condone some of the things that were said. I'm sure there were some really hateful things said. Don't know it all, but overall, it comes with the territory when you're making that kind of money and in that kind of position, no matter what hand you're dealt. So it is what it is, Josh, and he'll have to move on, unfortunately, along with some others. As far as the Wren Baker press conference goes, I can't be anything but impressed with Wren Baker anytime he takes the stage or anytime he talks in a public setting or when we talk to him, just us and him.
Mm-hmm.
He's incredibly articulate. He's incredibly intelligent. He's a very good communicator. It's no wonder he's in this position. A couple of different things that he said stuck to me. One, a motto, if you want to talk about trust the climb, how about sharpen your axe? Sharpen the axe.
Yeah.
I thought that was great.
I liked it.
And for those of you that don't know what he said, he's had 10 months to weigh this decision, and he's been looking at profiles for 10 months, obsessing about it. And the old saying is, if you get 8 hours to sharpen a tree, spend 6 sharpening your axe.
8 hours to cut a tree.
And what I say, sharpen a tree?
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's all right.
8 hours to cut down a tree, to spend 6 sharpening your axe.
Right.
So sharpen the axe. I think that's a pretty good motto for WV basketball. Maybe it'll catch on. Maybe we'll make T-shirts. Who knows? But that was one point. Another point that I saw was, which is why I made the thumbnail what it is, there are going to be no WVU ties. And he made no bones about that, guys. He went as far as to say, hey, look, if when I get down to the end of these profiles, there are a couple that, let's say I get down, probably when he gets down to the last 3 or 4, if there's a West Virginia tie, just happens to be one, okay, maybe I'll look at it. Maybe it can enhance it at that point. But is no way, shape, or form is the WVU tie going to be a reason he goes down the road of looking at one of those profiles. And I thought that was enlightening, to say the least. Obviously, he, as nicely as he could, put a nix on any kind of Bob Huggins talk.
Yep.
And rightly so. We all know that that we need to move on in a different direction. And if you'll notice, guys like Ben McCollum and people like that haven't been counted out, by my estimation, by what he said today. All he wants is somebody that's been a proven head coach at some level, his words, some level, and have a proven track record of success. So I think, anybody, and also he brought up the Texas Tech coach like 5 or 6 times during the press conference. Seriously, McCaslin was brought up a bunch. He could be a sneaky pick. I mean, look, would he have brought him up that often if he was thinking about hiring him? Doubtful, but you never know. It's obviously he admires him a lot. Right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's obvious.
So those are kind of my initial takeaways from the press conference. And obviously there are more people than just Wren that know about his list because he said as much in the press conference. There's a few people that have seen his spreadsheet.
Steve Urias, for one, which I didn't even know he was still there. I thought he was leaving for Tarleton State. But I guess he hasn't left yet officially. But anyway, he was actually there today.
Yeah.
But yeah, the quote he used about Huggins, he said, first off, he talked about how he respected and admired Huggins for what he had done.
He said that multiple times.
Yeah. And I think, and I'm going to try to quote this. I may mess it up, but he said basically, I think you can respect the past, but look ahead to the future.
That's what he said.
And he said, you can do that. And that's what I'm trying to do. And he said, I know I didn't answer your question the way you wanted me to, but I think you can read into that. So And that, I mean, to me, adding that statement on at the end was his way of saying it's not happening. We need to move on. He just can't come out and say that. You know what I mean?
No.
It wouldn't be professional.
Real quick, Couz, Jonathan Palmer and Chief fan both. We have 2 super chats, Couz. I didn't even realize we already had one from like 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, Mark Painter gave us one a minute ago.
We didn't even read it, did we?
Well, he had given a comment earlier, which I put up on the screen. It said, "Guys, I rush my typing at times to you because I have been so frustrated at wasted opportunity this year. I will always support you. We just had a team give it away with the 3 technicals we saw." And then he left us a $5 donation, and then he said, "No more ties to Bob. Start this new and right with bigs in the paint, then power forwards like Kenyon." So thank you, Mark Painter. We have 2 more pop in. Shaggy of West Virginia, thank you for the $4.99 super chat. He says, "I don't want Huggins back, but I did not appreciate Ken Kendrick's verbally trashing Hugs. There are still a lot of us who like Hugs." And we're going to get to that later in the show, Shaggy, so I appreciate you bringing that up. So we are going to talk about, we wanted to get the Wren Baker stuff. We want to talk about that first, and because that was kind of more fresh. And then we're going to close this thing out by talking about the Ken Kendrick comments, because Paul and I have not had a chance to talk about any of this today. We've both been really busy, so this is all fresh and new. So I want to get his thoughts on it, and I'll give mine. And then we got TRM Music. He says, "I think he ruled out McCollum when he said D1 experience. He is also looking for elite defense from last 5 seasons using Ken Palm." Did he? Now, maybe I missed that comment about D1 experience. I didn't catch that.
I didn't hear that. I didn't hear it either. I'm not saying that you're lying, TRM, but the words I heard were head coach at some level. That's what I heard.
Yeah,
now,
I heard the same thing.
If he said I was multitasking, listening to it, so he could have said D1 and clarified it at some point. I honed in on the D1 coach at some level part. He did say that. So I find it hard to believe that he would rule out a guy like McCollum if he's basing it on all the things he said he was basing it on. But at the same time, I personally don't want McCollum. I'm just saying, if you're looking at profiles, there's not many stronger than him. Outside of just not coaching at the, even the D2 level.
Yeah. But TRM Music, thank you, man. Again, I may have missed it too. I'll have to go. I think I might go back and listen to it again now to see, because I missed that little snippet of. I was driving when I was listening, so I was also multitasking, so I could have very easily missed it myself. But thank you for that.
He don't think he said at the D1 level, but I'll go back and listen.
But the other comment I did want to touch on the other piece of that comment. The elite defense. Paul, did you pick up on what he talked about? When they asked him, when you look at this conference and what kind of team, what kind of coach you want, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He did not even hesitate. But they had barely finished asking the question. He said, great on defense, or good on defense.
Right.
I mean, it didn't even, I was like, my God, he didn't even hesitate. So, right off the bat, that's high on his priority list.
Yeah. And it's going to help us separate some candidates, guys. Yeah. I had planned on going today and doing some of what he talked about myself. I'm not going to sit down with Ken Palm and do that as much, but I am going to look at who, via Ken Palm and others, are the best defensive units in the country. Probably go back 2 years, maybe 3, and kind of try to see who rises to the top. He said there's a natural break at some points with some of these coaches across all facets, which I think is interesting. That they're, I wonder, if I was there, God, man, it'd be hard not to. Why can't you just ask who? I know. I mean, it's not saying are you gonna? It doesn't mean I'm asking, are you gonna hire this guy? I'd just be curious who are these people? Who are the natural breaks he was talking about? But people weren't going to ask those questions in that setting. I get it. Limited questions and all that. One other thing I think is really important to hone in on here, guys. 2 things. He looked hesitant when asked about the NIL situation, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. I don't think he's 100% sure. It's just my view from it. Maybe other people have a different view. And number 2, the salary situation certainly he said top half of the league. So we need to look at what the top half of the league makes and get realistic about who we can hire, guys. Like people throwing Chris Beard in there. We're not going to get Chris Beard without top 2 money, top 3 at worst, probably. We're going to have to get over $4.5 million to 5 for a guy like Chris Beard, y'all. And it's probably not going to happen. If Chris Beard were available and could come to West Virginia, could they wrangle up the money? Probably. You know, I think if a guy like that came available, maybe they would move some stuff around to make it happen. But to get like, let's say like a Dusty May, you know, a guy who everybody wants, who's probably going to get overpaid a bit, I don't see us going beyond and over. There are probably candidates that are close to Dusty May that Wren likes and so on and so forth, probably that aren't going to cost as much. But unfortunately, if it was just a West Virginia job, the Big 12, if the dollars weren't a concern, I would put no limit on who we could hire. But that's the biggest limiting factor I can see to, and obviously interest in the job. And he mentioned fit a lot as far as somebody that can embrace being the face of the state of West Virginia. That can't be overstated either. Somebody has to be like Neil Brown. Somebody has to be willing to be a Neil Brown, right? Or what a Hugs was.
Yeah, and that's Pokemon Kid Entertainment dropped us a $1 donation a minute ago, so I'm going to read his comment. He says, Hugs was getting paid $4 million. And plus it kind of falls into what we're talking about here with salaries and whatnot. Yes, he was getting paid $4 to $4.5 million. And I was in a debate with somebody on X today about this. They're mad because they feel like we're going to get a subpar coach because we're not willing to pay. Because we were paying, they think we need to pay somebody the same thing we were paying Bob Huggins. Guys, Bob Huggins was a Hall of Fame coach.
Right.
Bob Huggins basically was West Virginia basketball for about 17 years. He was one of the most famous coaches in America. He was the most winning coach in America. We're not going to get that again. I mean, you've got to get that out of your mind. They're not going to pay $4.5 million to get a coach that's probably going to have to come from a mid-major school. That doesn't make good business sense.
Right. And think about the circumstances there.
And a lot of them are saying, well, but you can go pick off a Power 5 coach. Most Power 5 coaches are already making that or close to it. So they're not going to leave their job where they're probably happy to come to West Virginia for basically the same or maybe just a little bit more money. I don't think that's realistic. And I don't want fans to get their expectations too high. And also,
I think Kyle Smith is realistic, but he's like one of the only ones.
Yeah, I'm not saying we can't get a Power 5 coach, but I just think the people are throwing names out there that I don't think are realistic.
Beard.
Like Chris Beard.
Chris Beard's the name you hear the most.
And I know we're not going to get – and the way they look at he used the word ambassador today. He wants somebody that will be a good ambassador for the state and the university. To me, that's a sort of way of saying we don't want anybody with baggage. We don't want anybody that has a history of, whatever. Even though the charges got dropped on Chris Beard, it's still out there. What he was accused of is still out there. It's fresh on people's minds. Do you really want to take a chance on that when you just got rid of a guy for doing something that was in that same realm of wrongdoing? I don't know.
And
some would say worse, actually.
Yeah. It probably removes Will Wade, which is unfortunate. But, yeah.
Well, see, to me, I agree. To me, Will Wade's is different because it was
not legal.
It wasn't like a felony. He didn't commit a felony.
Yeah, it wasn't illegal. I mean,
it was against the NCAA rules, but it wasn't putting somebody's life in danger. You know what I'm saying?
Well, when I say illegal, I just mean like in the law, the court of law, not like NCAA rules. That's not going to put you in jail.
Yeah. Hobson says we need to be realistic with our expectations. Hugs ain't coming back, and we're not getting anyone with a bad history. Lidsell, thank you, man. I know some people don't like to hear it, and I might have just pissed some people off, but we're just relaying information. It's not, Yeah. Sorry, I cut you off. No, that's okay. No, you're right.
I get a little upset, but there should be nobody pissed. at you. Like if you read between the lines and really looked at it, listen, there's a thing, and you've probably heard of this, it's called confirmation bias. Or you can, there's a bunch of different tests you can do, but it's almost like if you say apple, 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 or I tell you, look around your room right now and tell me everything brown that you see. Look around the room right now and see everything brown that you see. How many red things did you see? So the brain has a way of going and trying to latch on for confirmation, right? Call it confirmation bias, whatever you want to call it. Similarly, with this, people are going to look for reasons and ways to validate kind of like their beliefs. Whatever you think is good, who needs to be the next coach, who the next coach is going to be. Oh, I think I heard Wren say this, but I have to stay personally. I have to try to stay as objective as possible in all this. So I'm going to try, and are there guys that I lean towards or two? Yeah, absolutely. I've made that clear, but I'm going to try to separate that, and I'm usually pretty good at it.
Yeah, I agree. And David Cummings makes a great point. He says the only reason we got Huggins was because Beeline had built the program back up. And that goes to another great point Wren Baker made. Bob Hertzel asked a question which kind of irritated me because Wren had said, doesn't have to have West Virginia ties, and he was trying to move on from that. Well, Bob Hertzel comes back and he says, yes, but when you look at some of the most successful coaches in West Virginia history, and he mentioned Rich Rodriguez, he mentioned Huggins, and he mentioned Gail Catlett. Left out Don Neyland, who wasn't from West Virginia. Left out John Beeline, who wasn't from West Virginia. You know what I'm saying?
And Neil Brown, yeah.
And Neil Brown, but I wasn't going to include him in that conversation just yet. But yeah,
the successful coaches, yeah, right.
But he, I think he'll be on that list at some point, but he's not yet. But my point being, he handpicked certain guys to fit potentially the agenda of the question.
That's confirmation bias. Exactly what that is. Yeah.
Exactly. And Wren even talked about how we've got coaches here now in other sports that aren't from West Virginia that are doing fine. Nicky Izzo Brown, I think Randy Mazey, and he mentioned he talked about the men's soccer coach. But he didn't even go back in the past and talk about Don Neyland and John Beeline and some others. So I felt like Wren did a great job of hammering home that point with the way he answered that question. But I wanted to hammer home 100%. Even more because Bob just didn't. Bob was. I felt like Bob was trying to. Something. Yeah, I think he was trying to paint him into a corner.
He had some kind of agenda. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost like he had an agenda. Like you're not going to influence the search. You know what I mean? From your press spot. Yeah. Like it felt like that's what he was trying to do. Like in some way influence this search. People, reporters, some of the guys in the media, there's a lot of us that would have, want a tie to West Virginia. I understand the want for that. I do. Just like if the football job came open, Rich Rod wouldn't be very far down the list for me of candidates that I would like to see come back. But that doesn't mean it has to be that way either. Like it doesn't have to be that way. There are some people where they just feel like it has to be that way, or you can't win here, you can't succeed here. I think it has to be a specific. It's almost like, and Wren actually brought this up for another thing, but like it's almost like when you're recruiting for a system, right? You have players that fit molds of, hey, that guy looks like he'd be a great outside linebacker. That guy looks like he'd be a great spear, right? Similarly for this job, you've got to have somebody that fits it, right? And like you said, they have a few things they've thrown in with the ambassador, with probably somebody that has some kind of regional ties to the area, or somebody, yeah.
Not, I mean, he didn't say ties, like but that can recruit the region.
Yeah,
yeah, and that can that kind of knows the region and is comfortable in the region, and also somebody that is willing to be the face of the university. He made a point. This is when you're the head coach here. You've got to be. You're more than just a football coach. or a basketball coach. You're the face of the university. And
Right.
it's got to be somebody that's comfortable with that. So basically, everything he described is not Dana Holgorsen, pretty much.
Yeah.
But I don't.
And look,
I
he
say
had
that
some
as a
great
joke,
success.
but that is what I thought about when he said it.
Well, Dana did try. Like the man trip. Don't forget, everybody, that was Dana's idea.
He tried. He did try. And he
the whole rubbing the coal and the helmet and all that.
That was his idea. Waving at the kids in the hospital was his idea.
Yeah, he did try. It just wasn't for him. I just
don't think it was a good fit personality wise.
Not at all.
You know what I mean? Nothing against him personally.
Not at all.
Actually, I think Dana. I've met Dana a couple times, or one time, and he gave me the vibe as the type of guy I'd love to sit down and have a drink with. Like he'd be really cool to hang out with.
For sure. The recent sound comments on the screen is McCaslin would have to take a pay cut to come here, guys.
Yeah,
you realize that, right?
And
Texas Tech has got a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. That too. Texas Tech's got a lot of money to pay their coaches, guys. They just, that's just where they live. Partially, they have huge donor base too. Like they've been right there at the top of the NIL, coaches' salaries, everything. They're looking at the top 5.
Mm-hmm.
So they just, we would have to overreach to get a guy like McCaslin who, he's good, but is he great? I think, I don't know.
Silver 8 Tundra, you make a great point. He says Huggins is highly respected in basketball and is known as the face of WVU basketball. I have wondered if some coaches may pass up the job in respect for Huggins. I thought the same thing, but my biggest concern was would they pass it up because they're afraid Huggins is going to be lingering around the program, hanging around, that kind of thing. Which
that's a good point.
But I think, and we'll get to this in a minute, but I think the Kendrick thing was to try to squash that idea. I think that was planned. I'll be honest with you.
I wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah.
When Huggins was coming to the games and stuff, seeing how this season turned out, knowing that you're the reason for this over and over again, did you ever consider? I don't know why I never thought about it until today. From that viewpoint, but like in Bob Huggins' shoes, like let's say 90%, you're the reason that things are like this, and you're at the games. I wonder why that didn't deter him. Like did he not feel uncomfortable in that situation?
No.
Or was there some? I feel like there's still some denial with Huggins on some of this stuff, man. I really do. But maybe I'm wrong. How do you guys feel? Let me know. I'd like to know how you all feel about that.
I kind of get that
Huggins
too, to a degree.
Yeah. Like, how could he not feel awkward the way the team was performing, being that he was the reason that they didn't have the horses? Just curious.
And I don't know if you heard one of his episodes of Full Court Press. He actually said that they tried to tell him he wasn't allowed back in the building, and he talked to an attorney, and the attorney said they can't keep you out of the building. It's a public building. They can't keep you out of it. He said,
not unless he breaks some kind of rule.
Right, correct. He said as long as he said they cannot legally keep you out of the building. So
yeah.
I do think there are some things Huggins may be doing that are intentional.
Right.
But I don't want to accuse him of that because I don't know the reasoning. He also could be there to support the guys that he recruited. You know what I mean? And if that's the case, you look at it from that perspective, I have no issue with it. So I don't want to throw too much mud on Huggins, man, to be honest with you. I just think we need to move on from him.
It's hard for everybody.
It is hard.
He's gone from being our hero, at least in one of my heroes, to a pathetic, sad, like not a pathetic, but like a sympathetic figure. Like in a lot of ways. And for me, like when I see him, I feel sorry for him, and I cried over him.
Yeah.
But I love West Virginia more. I love this thing more than I'll ever love Bob Huggins. That's why I got it tattooed right here on my chest, and always will have. That's right over with my dad's initials. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, John Kelly makes a great point. Herzl definitely was trying to influence the search. And Liza Barnes, I agree with you, but I disagree with one little nugget you said up here. He says Bob's only Final Four is with Beeline's kids. That's partially true. Huggins actually recruited Devin Ebanks and Truck Bryant and Kevin Jones, I believe. I could be wrong on Kevin Jones.
And that was the one has 131 as well.
But I'm pretty confident that he recruited those three guys, and those were key pieces to that team. Now,
that was his style, too.
Deshaun Butler, Joe Mazzulla, John Flowers, they were all recruited, I think by Beeline, but correct me if I'm wrong. I could be wrong on
I've never really looked back.
I do know there was a mix. I do know there was a mix of guys, though. There was a few guys on that team that were recruited by Huggins.
Right.
I'm pretty confident in that because they were from New York. They were almost all from New York, and we all know he loved to recruit New York guys.
Yeah, he did.
But I do agree with the comment you made about him taking over a program that Beeline built. That I actually agree with.
It's a good question from Chris Hayes down here.
When it comes to Dusty May, do you guys think we could beat out at Louisville and Ohio State for him? Don't know, man. Don't know.
It's all on Dusty May, I think, at that point.
Yeah, they actually asked Wren about, his concern about other programs being open now. And he basically said, look, I got to focus on our program. I can't worry about that. And basically said he's not going to get into a bidding war, which I know some fans probably don't want to hear that. But he's not going to get into a bidding war with somebody. And he probably shouldn't. It's probably not good business.
Right.
But I did like the comment he made about how he knows. He said I also have enough connections around the country to know about the jobs that are going to come open that aren't open yet.
Right. It's funny.
So he's probably already checking guys off his list based on that. He can't say that, but he probably is.
Exactly. That's a great point, Couz. Great point. This question here. If Chris Mack's going to be the guy, you'll know within a week, right? Because he's going to have the job.
Yeah.
So if this thing lingers on in the tournament, you can just by nature basically knock some guys out of this conversation. John Beilein, Chris Mack, right? These are two guys that aren't coaching right now that could fill the vacancy right now. Or maybe they'll wait till after Eilert's last day officially, but I doubt it. If they had a guy, they would hire him tomorrow. But that process, you would think, if it was going to be Mack or a guy like Mack, would already be finished before today, right? Because the job is coming open at least for 2-3 weeks based on how the team was performing. Maybe longer if you always thought Eilert was never coming back. So why wouldn't we be getting a press conference about Chris Mack in the next week or two at the very most, just so he can make it look like he wasn't talking to him.
Right.
So you could naturally, if we get to the tournament, just go ahead and forget about Chris Mack or John Beilein, which breaks my heart. I'd love to see Chris Mack here.
Agreed. Let's address his super chats from Conservative Nation. Thank you for the super chat. He says, bruh, we're going to hire. Who are we going to hire? No one wants to coach here. We're in the middle of nowhere. I find it hilarious that fans think we can get some big flashy coach. Well, there's part of that statement I take exception to. Part of it I somewhat agree with. I do agree with the statement about fans think, wanting us to get some big flashy coach. Wren's going to hire the best coach, not the flashiest coach. So that part I agree with. The other part I take exception to. That's a quality job. Wren went down the list today of why it's a good job. Great facilities, some of the best in the country, a great passionate fan base and coaches look at that stuff. Coaches look at that. It matters. Top 2 home court advantage in the country, according to Kim Pom. Okay.
For the last 2 years.
For the last 2 years. Even a year that they were 9-22. 9-23, actually, counting the Big 12 tournament game. 9-23 still had top 2 home court advantage in the country. That matters. NIL is good. At least it has been the last 2 seasons, last 2 off seasons. That
number
matters.
One class in the country at some points last year.
There are coaches who would love that. And let's face it, there are coaches out there who like a small town feel. Not everybody wants to live in New York or Chicago or Dallas or Houston. Some people want to live in a small college town. There are guys, for example, and I'm not saying, well, he's not flashy, but let's just use Mark Byington for an example, who's a candidate for the job at James Madison. He's from Salem, Virginia. That's an hour from my house, hour and a half from my house. It's regional. It's close. He'll understand the culture. Those are the types of things. If you can find a guy who fits that, then he would be willing to come here. And let's be honest, if it pays well enough and you get a guy from a mid-major, he's going to want the dough. And it's the best conference in basketball. That matters too. They want to play against the best teams. TRM Music, thank you for another super chat.
Oh,
sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to reiterate kind of what you said, but
yeah, go ahead.
On the what he said about, I just wanted to clarify what he meant by flashy. Do you mean like a Chris Beard, like a top of the line, like as far as what's viewed as best candidates, like that are coaching that have jobs, or do you mean like a John Calipari, like somebody that's like flashy in nature, like that's wears the real nice suits? Like, I'm just curious what you meant by flashy exactly, and also wanted to thank you for the $9.99 super chat. Really, really appreciate it.
Yeah. TRM Music, $4.99 super chat says at 5:49 mark, Baker press conference on WVU Sports Channel. My one hard and fast requirement is a demonstrated track record at the Division I level. Okay. Thank you for that. I'll appreciate you clarifying it. Like I said, I was driving, so I glossed over that. So I appreciate you sharing that, man. And thank you for the support. And I thank you for doing another super chat to correct us. I'm cool with that.
Thank you for the super chat.
Yeah, and I guess that would rule out. a Ben McCollum then, right?
Well, I'm going to take it all in context because I could have sworn he said at some level at some point in the conference as well.
Well, he did. I think he did say that, but I'm not sure. Like you say, it's all about context, right? What he said before.
Yeah, like an excerpt is one thing, but like taking it all in context.
Mm-hmm. I
don't want to say you're wrong, TRM. To my ear, I just want to hear it all the way through one more time. Not saying you're wrong at all. I just want to make sure because I'm on camera talking about this and just want to be certain about how I feel about it before I take a stance.
Yeah. Laszlo's got a great point. The flashy, quote unquote, flashy coaches have a lot of baggage, and West Virginia wants somebody that doesn't have baggage.
Right.
Shannon Miller says he's not 100 locked into JB. He'll take a young guy if he can stay long enough to compete. Who is he?
Chris Mack would be really, honestly, the best possible hope, in my opinion, based on track record and where he's coached as far as regionality. But like I said, if that doesn't happen quick, it's probably not going to happen unless there's unless they're just waiting to announce it, or if there's some kind of maybe negotiation going on there.
Browns and Beer says he thinks McCollum ends up at Mizzou. He thinks it makes sense, and it would kind of make sense. Midwest, right? Can stay in the state. Everyone, don't forget to hit the like button. Thank you, Randomly Savage, for that. We appreciate it.
One of the best names on the channel.
Civil Mark, West Virginia says, I'm glad to see you back, Couz. Don't think Paul likes me.
Why you say that for?
I guess maybe you didn't read his chats. I don't know.
Oh, man, if I didn't, I'm sorry.
Conservative Nation, another super chat. We thank you. He says, I mean a coach like Dusty May, Steve Forbes, etc. I'm not sure we can't get one. We might get one of those guys.
Both of those guys are in play, man. They really are.
Yeah.
I don't consider those to be flashy. Maybe Dusty May is a little bit flashy. He's like the taste of the month. But Steve Forbes is, if he wants to leave Wake Forest, he's very gettable from a salary standpoint. From what he's done at the D1 level hasn't been great, but what he did at East Tennessee was pretty good.
Yep. Let's go ahead and talk about this Kendrick thing. Most of you probably know by now, but Kendrick today was on WV Metro News on an interview with Hoppy, Now, Ken Kendrick, for those of you who may not know, is the largest donor. I don't want to know if he's the largest, but it's just kind of assumed he is. He's the owner of the Arizona Diamondbacks. I'm not sure a lot of people are going to have more money than him, but he's a mega donor for West Virginia. I mean, Wren Baker even mentioned his name on our show. He actually made a comment in the interview that he knew Wren was going to make the decision about Eilert before we did. That's how connected he is. He was on Hoppy's show today, and Hoppy asked him about, in a nutshell, I'm paraphrasing, asked him, with this job being open, what are your thoughts about Bob Huggins potentially coming back? And here is what Ken Kendrick said, and then me and Paul are going to react to it. He says, I think WVU and their handling of the Bob Huggins debacle probably were too lenient with him. Had he worked for me, he would have not had a job after he engaged in this vituperative series of homophobic remarks back in the spring, and then was retained under very difficult circumstances, and then lost his job as a result of a drunken stupor, I will call it, Kendrick said. It's the second time he's lost his job because of drunkenness. It may not be remembered by many, but it is by me. He was let go by Cincinnati for exactly the same reason. So I think he has no place in the lives of young men who deserve quality leadership. So I would be one who would wonder about the mental capacity of any leader of any university who would consider hiring him for a coaching position. Then he goes on to say, it's a hard no on his return. And he says this, instead of being in the Hall of Fame, he should be in the Hall of Shame, to be blunt. Then he did backtrack and say, I need to be more compassionate. And he said, then he went on to say, alcoholism is a disease, and he's had that disease for a long time. Now, what I just said about compassion is not in the article, but he did say that because I listened to it myself. He says alcoholism is a disease, and he's had that disease for a long time. But his future,
the article didn't.
But his future with WVU sports is totally at an end. And anyone who would think he should be considered, I'd really question whether they ought to seek some counseling. So very strong words from mega donor and arguably West Virginia's largest donor, Mr. Ken Kendrick. So, Paul, I'm going to get your thoughts on that, and then I'm going to give you mine.
Oh, my God. I'll tell you what, man. This one here is I'm reacting to this in real time.
Yeah, Paul hadn't heard it yet, by the way, so you guys know.
From somebody that has a background like me, those are. I'm reminded of what the basic text of Narcotics Anonymous says, which is one of my favorite quotes in NA, and I know it's not for everybody. The last, and it's the very last thing usually. The last thing people forget about us is what we used to be. Like, it's almost always the last thing. And it takes a lot of work to clean up those messes. It really, truly does. The freedom from the stigma of being an addict, right? It's the last thing lost to freedom, is how the book says it. The stigma of being an addict is the last thing lost to freedom. And to me, somebody who deals with that, and a lot of it's, I consider, like, I just put it on me, like it's the wreckage of my past. It's the wreckage of how I behaved. I deserve that, But once you get into the recovery process and you get several years behind you like I have, there are still people who don't forget and never forgive or forget. And Kendrick seems to be like one of those kind of guys. Now, Bob Huggins is what I would consider still a baby in recovery from alcoholism, less than a year, I think. So anytime you're in that first year, that's still extremely difficult. I don't know that he drinks occasionally or not. I'm going to assume that he went completely off, just based on things I've heard said. But this comes off incredibly judgmental. It comes off, yes, I agree that he shouldn't be, like, some of the stuff he said is true, yeah, okay, I don't want, nobody's asking. Well, I'm not asking for him to be the head of West Virginia basketball anymore. But these are things that can be said behind closed doors, not publicly, and I don't know why they needed to be aired publicly. Certainly he had an axe to grind here, it seems like to me. So whatever he wanted to shoot towards Bob Huggins, he did. I'm sure he had the platform over in Arizona with the Diamondbacks if he wanted to do that. And he wanted to come to West Virginia and do it, fine. But I disagree with it mostly. And I'm glad he's a donor to the school. Would appreciate everything he does for us and all that. But guys like this can tend to be a little out of touch, and these are people that never have to answer anybody, So I just hope that you, Ken Kendricks, are never in a situation like Bob Huggins was in, to where you make a misstep or you're in some kind of bad spot. Hopefully, the people that are in a position to forgive you or forget for you do that when the time comes, if it ever does.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you my thought. I'm gonna read you a super chat, and then I'll give you my thoughts. TRM Music says sounded like Kendrick had a long beef with Huggins. Thank you, TRM Music. It does kind of sound that way, doesn't it? To be honest. And then I wanted to read another comment up here from Browns and Beers. It says Kendricks went scorched earth on Huggins. As I mentioned earlier, it's how a lot of people felt at WU with Huggins after he sued the school, which he actually never did actually sue him. I think he threatened to sue him. And a vocal portion of the fan base still wanted him back. And that's the part I want to comment on, Browns and Beers. This had to be planned. The timing of this cannot be coincidental. The day you announce you're going to hire a new coach, you go get your biggest donor to come on live radio and say all these things. I think it was done, and I know by Kendrick and the university through WV Metro News, who's kind of an arm of the university to a degree, to squash the noise in the fan base and those fans who want him back. I think they were trying to squash that narrative, and they thought the best way to do that was to have Kendrick come on here and speak his piece. I don't have an issue with wanting to squash the narrative or squash those voices or shut those people up. But did he really have to get on there and trash a guy personally like that? I feel like he could have done it in a much more friendlier, kinder, more professional manner. Again, I disagree with a lot of the things Hugs has done, but he's still a human being. He has a problem. And I did not agree with some of the words that were used in that statement by Kendrick. Although I agree with the overall premise of it that Hugs doesn't need to be back, he didn't need to go on a 4-minute tirade about how bad of a person Bob Huggins is to do that, in my opinion. That's my thoughts on it. Again, thanks to Ken Kendrick for all he does, and all he has done and all he will do. But
Chase, it's called making content, man. That's what we do. I don't understand.
Waste time talking about it.
Yeah, he's talking about Huggins. He said it doesn't matter what you think of.
I think he was talking about why is Kendrick talking about it. I'm assuming that's what he's talking about. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I've been following it, but
okay. Okay, maybe he is talking about it. I don't know, because that's kind of what a YouTube channel's for. If we're not going to talk about it, then we might as well shut it down and go do something else.
Because it was addressed in the press conference, Chase. I get you have strong feelings about this, man. Just take a quick breath, Try not to get triggered or anything like that. Being honest. I'm not trying to pull your leg or anything like that, or like reverse slap you with, because some people will use like, why are you so triggered, bro? To try to mess with people. Just calm down for a sec, man. Listen, we have to talk about this stuff. I appreciate you tuning in and all that. Seems like this is a subject you're really passionate about. Just check it out. Wren Baker addressed it. We have to address it. And not only that, whether you want to hear it or not, a lot of our fans want to talk about Bob Huggins still. And it would be dumb business wise for us not to do so if we had no personal stake in it at all. And we do have personal stake in it. But that's the point, is not only do we have some personal stake in it, but it's also a business sense. And if I throw Bob Huggins on a thumbnail, we're going to get several thousand views on that video. And I don't do it because of that, but it is a fact. So at the end of the day, man, that's why we're talking about him, I guess I could say.
Yeah. I don't think he lives. I could be wrong, John. You obviously know the area better than me. John Waffle, H2P. But I was in Morgantown about 3 weeks ago. Drove by the road Bob Huggins lives on. I'm pretty confident it's in Morgantown. Now, I'm not sure exactly where the border is versus, but I'm pretty confident it's in West Virginia.
Chase, man.
Don't
what are you doing? I tried to be as nice to you as I possibly could.
Just ignore him. Just ignore it, Paul.
But I'm gonna address this one last time and then I'll shut up. But it's not just about clicks. It's only part of the process, man. It plays a factor. It has to play a factor. I mean, this is what I do for a living. You get that? So yes, it does play a factor. It is not the factor. It's one of a myriad of factors of like 20. If you don't like it, you can go, man. I was trying to be really nice to you.
Look at it this way. And we're not professional media people. We are, I guess, what you call independent media, or I don't know what the technical term is. We're content creators. Okay. We are an arm of the media, but we're not quote unquote professional media. But even professional media people are writing articles about this today. It was all over the place. Every single media outlet that covers West Virginia wrote an article about this today. Are they doing it for clicks? Yes, because it's a business.
Right.
Give me a break, man.
I mean, let's not pretend like we don't make money on this channel. We do.
And it's very it's minimal, but we do make money.
Right.
Some people think we're getting rich doing this, but if we were, I'd be putting out a hell of a lot more content than I do. I can tell you that, because I'd have more time. Professional media sucks. Okay, Chase C says, all I asked is, as a fan base, we are still talking about Huggins so much.
Well, it's just there's an obsession with him. I'll give you that. He was part of a lot of people's childhood growing up, and who is your biggest hero, Chase? If your biggest hero went through this, could you just sweep it under the rug over the course of a few months? Especially when that hero was so closely, it's almost like a lot of this you can't talk about without at least referencing Bob Huggins. Excuse me. A lot of people really truly felt like he was going to be a candidate this time around. Mm-hmm. There are still people that feel that way. And while you may have a bit more levity about the situation as regarding Huggins than others, not everybody is. Yeah. There are some people that are a little bit in fantasy land that still, even after Wren's press conference, believe that he's a candidate. Like, they're out there.
Yeah.
So I don't know why, but it's true.
Matthew pretty much sums it up in a very short fashion. He says he's arguably the most influential person in the state of West Virginia of all time.
Well, next to Jerry West.
Well, in a sports sense, yes. I mean, there's a lot of people, the Rockefellers, the Birds of the world, you could put in that argument. But I think from a sports perspective, Matthew's absolutely right. He's definitely up there. He's got to be him, Jerry West, maybe Don Nealon. Yeah, people like that. Big Aaron says he was a huge part of our program for so long and a larger-than-life, well-respected figure. It's not easy to just never talk about him ever again. Yep. And like Paul mentioned earlier, he keeps showing up to games. I mean, he's kind of putting himself out there. He's on a podcast now, has his own, or he's a co-host of a podcast, or has a segment on a podcast, I guess. I don't know technically what his role is, but I mean, he's putting himself out there. I wish he was on our.
Listen, me too. He can come join our podcast any day of the week.
He won't now. We've said
right.
We've been too
honest. Thanks, Chase.
No, we've been too honest about the situation. We've said it many times.
I think he would appreciate that.
He probably would. We've said many a time we love the guy, but we also didn't think he should be the coach. I mean, after what happened. So it doesn't have to be either or, right?
Right. All right. Appreciate that, Chase. Oh, let me put what Chase set up real quick so we can get past this.
Okay.
He's just apologized. So I appreciate that, man. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to take the Shaggy super chat.
It's all right. We'll get it back. You can put it back up there if you want. There we go. Shaggy of West Virginia, thanks for the donation. He says, Huggins didn't deserve to be trashed by a billionaire who has no idea how much Huggins means to the average Mountaineer.
I agree with that.
I just think he could have said it. I mean, saying Hall of Shame.
Why can't he say this on the phone to him? That's what I don't understand.
I mean, and don't say, the Hall of Shame comment. Again, I think it was planned. I don't know that I'll say planned. I think it was maybe a plan between Ken and, I don't know if they knew.
Hoppy.
They probably didn't
Hoppy.
know it. Yeah. No, not Hoppy necessarily, but maybe the school. And maybe it was Hoppy too. I don't know. It seems like it does.
Hoppy's had an agenda.
Well, this wasn't – it was on Hoppy's show, and then one of his colleagues wrote the article, Brad McElhaney. But it does kind of seem like WV Metro News has been part of an anti-Hugs agenda, doesn't it?
No doubt about that. Hoppy Hirschville, I told you on the show last time or time before last that he was almost quivering with joy talking about some of the bad things with Hugs. Like he loves it.
Yeah. I like Hoppy, but I don't always agree with everything he says and does,
Well, which way he leans. So,
yeah. Jacob Yoho, $2 super chat says, I just hope Bob finds a new home and coach. I do too. And you know what? I'm going to root for the guy when they don't play West Virginia, obviously. But if he goes to, I hope to God he don't go to a Big 12 school. If he does.
Well, according to Kendrick, that person needs to be go to the psych ward if they hire him.
I knew how you would feel about those comments, Paul. So it was cool to get your reaction in real time. I got a feeling if we had not been on the air, it would have been different. You'd have been a little bit more animated about it.
Oh yeah.
Maybe use some different words. Oh man. Yeah. Big Aaron says Hoppy's out of touch.
Yeah.
Lizel thinks Shaggy's take is silly. Huggins did deserve to be trashed by a billionaire. Huggins meant a lot.
Sorry, I was trying to move
to the average Mountaineer. How much did the average Mountaineer mean to Hugs? Obviously not very much.
But do you see what we're talking about here, Chase? Like, people want to talk about this issue.
Yeah.
I mean, the Huggins comments will not stop. It's literally number one.
Marcus Moto says he thinks it would be like spitting in our faces, to be honest.
What?
Going to a Big 12 school.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know. It depends on which Big 12 school. I mean, listen, he wants – if you watch wrestling, Cody wants to finish his story, right? Hugs wants to finish his story too. That national championship to him is only one great transfer portal class away. And if Hugs lands in the right spot, I think with the weight he's lost, he might have the energy to round up and put all he's got into one more great team. I wouldn't be shocked if it happened. I'll just say that. I do think that he wasn't giving us all he had the last few years. He was kind of probably gotten comfortable and older. But now that the end is here, if somebody gave him a shot at a Power 5 job, I'd watch out. I really would.
Yeah, people talking about Hugs getting into broadcasting. I heard somebody else bring that up the other day, and then someone made a comment. Hugs is. You never know what he's going to say. You know what I mean? So you got. I'm not sure he's. Now he did do. I will say this: when he was on March Madness a couple of years ago, you remember that?
Yeah,
he did a fantastic job.
You might see him on the field of 68 or something like that. Yeah,
he did a great job.
It's the problem is I don't want to bring politics into this, but if we had a different president, maybe he would have a chance of getting a job. But like the things that he said are so looked at so badly in this era
Mhm.
that he would probably never get a job in broadcasting, at least right now. Now, it might take some time if a new regime came along, that isn't so crazy with that. But as of right now, that's how it is.
Aaron says it.
I don't agree with what he said at all. I'm just saying it's
Yeah. Aaron says he did a great job on that radio show.
right.
Shaggy of West Virginia, he's in a conversation with someone else in the chat. He just thinks Kendrick pissed off a lot of Mountaineers. Problem is, he doesn't care.
Here's the thing, guys. We
he
probably
doesn't owe Mountaineer fans a thing. He supports West
No.
Virginia because he loves them just like we do.
We need to be careful how we react to this a little bit. Like calling Kendricks out probably ain't the greatest idea. Like he could say, well, screw it. I won't give him nothing. I don't know if he would do that or not.
Us doing it he ain't gonna care what we say, in my opinion.
Some people are like that, man. I'll show you, I'll hurt me.
Yeah, I don't. Ken Kendrick is too smart of a guy to know to not know what he did was going to have people talking and have people pissed off. He knew that. He had to have.
Right.
He's been around the Western program too long, and he knows the importance. He had to have known. He just didn't care. I think he's that serious about, and he's that passionate about it that he was willing to say that. Like I said, I don't necessarily disagree with what he said as far as the premise of it. I just wish he'd went about it a different way. But
that's what I was going to say. As soon as you read that, how do I tell you? How does my brain work now that I'm a content creator? What did I say? What do I say all the time? How do I think? Do you remember?
I don't remember, but that's
in thumbnails.
Oh yeah.
Well, as you were reading that, all I could see was a picture of Kendrick and Huggins facing each other, and the headline says "Hall of Shame." That was my thumbnail. Like just as soon as you read that, that's what came to. Like if I were going to promote a video about
that's actually that. If I had made the thumbnail, that's what I was going to make it. No lie.
Right.
But anyway, Browns and Beers, you make a great point that I guess I didn't. He is the co-founder of Country Roads Trust, so I get maybe he does care what fans think because he needs fans to donate. But I don't know.
Timothy Green, where you been, man?
I am starting. Maybe he and Hugs don't get along. Maybe he has some kind of, I don't know. There's a lot of reasons he could have done it.
Well, look at it like this. Hugs was basically like a made man around the Morgantown for 17 years, right? Not even Kendrick could have him fired, because it's like when you're on I don't know, I don't have personal experience with this, but I can imagine when you're on a board like that, or let's say you're a part of a donor group, it's probably hard to fire somebody when you can't get all your buddies to agree with you, no matter how you feel, or people that are also donating. And so I would imagine that Kendrick probably, if he's had problems with Huggins for a while now, probably could never get more than just himself to want that to happen, because I've read a couple different things about donors being unhappy with Hugs for quite a few years now. You look at the Big 12 record specifically over a 5-year span, it's abysmal, different things like that. His Big 12 record was like over the last 5 years, I think it was like he was 20 games under 500 or something like that.
Jeff Barnes says Grant McCaslin. He read between the lines. Grant, I don't think he would have mentioned Grant McCaslin's name that many times if he was actually a candidate for the job.
Because then that would be tampering, right?
Potentially, or yeah. I mean, and he made a point to say I don't want to mention anybody by name, and then he mentioned Grant McCaslin's name like 3 times, so or at least 2 that I know of.
I mean, there's a path to it, I guess. It's just I would be surprised if it was McCaslin, but I wouldn't be mad either. I mean, he would be better than some of the candidates that are out there. Who is everybody's number one pick that's realistic? I'd like to know that. Like, if you say Chris Beard, well, okay, I agree with you then. That's my number one pick too. Or number between Beard and Joe Mazzulla, But like, who is realistic that you think we can get? Now, I'd like to see what everybody thinks about that. There you go, Matthew Swanson. I think I'm right in that boat with you. Sorry, we hit that same.
He asked you if you were reading Baja Blast, drinking Baja Blast.
Oh yeah. I
you would be the Dana Holgerson of podcasting, he says. Yeah, pretty good. I do that a lot anyway, so I can be the Dana Holgerson of podcasting. Sorry, guys, I didn't mean to do that into my mic. I was trying to be. I was trying to be funny. I probably just ran everybody out.
All three sides of the ball.
Yeah, pretty good. I like it when Tony does that on his show. It's hilarious.
Yeah. Tony's naturally very funny.
He is, and he's really good at impersonations too. Have you heard his Don Criqui impersonation?
I don't know who that is.
He's a baseball announcer. He's spot on. It's awesome.
Interesting.
Anyway.
Nathan Scott says Red Bull should be the next coach. Who's that?
You asked about coaches earlier, and Matthew Swanson said DeVries.
Yeah.
Civil Marks is Will Wade. Chase
That's my number one guy.
Pat Kelsey. I like all these guys.
That's awesome. Those are like my top three guys, seriously.
Yeah. They've been watching your show. They're trying to suck up to you is what they're doing.
They might be.
Browns and Beers says we're 2-25 in our last 27 road Big 12 games, I believe, including this year. Has been rough to say the least. Yeah. I guess, and let's be honest, it ain't like Huggs was winning national titles. I mean, again, I love the guy, but
the COVID team was the last really good team that we had. Then they didn't get a chance to play.
But what was so exciting is he had finally wrapped his head around the portal, finally accepted it, and had started using it to his advantage. And he had so much talent because really he hadn't been acquiring the right talent, in my opinion. And he was finally doing that, I think. And then it all went to hell in the handbasket.
He was eating cheese bread eaters. All he ever recruited was guys that ate cheese sandwiches, remember?
Yeah.
Does anybody else get that?
I do. Silver Mark, West Virginia wants to know. I don't have a P.O. box myself. I'm willing. I don't know who he's asking. Oh, he wants to send you some Baja Blast, Paul. Do you have a
P.O. box?
P.O. box.
You got my email, don't you, Mark? You asked for it, never sent me nothing. I'm thinking there. Just I'll give you my email address.
And he can email you his address.
Yeah, I'll email you the address, man. It's rocklepaul0@gmail.com. Rock like a rock with EL, Rockle Paul 0 at
you want me to type it in for you or no?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I didn't know if you wanted 138 people to see your
if they're all willing to support the PC fund or send me Baja Blast, I'm all for it.
All right. See. Drew Valentine at Loyola Chicago. Interesting name. I had not seen that name, Paul. Have you?
No. I mean, the coach they had when sister. It's amazing she's still alive, by the way. Isn't that the same one I'm thinking of?
Yes, Sister Jean.
Sister Jean.
Yep.
Yeah. And that coach is now who? Where does he coach at now? The one that went to that Sweet 16 with her.
That I don't know.
I just looked. I know it's somebody obvious, and I just forgot who it was. But I think they're coaching Power 5 now. Anyway, that's turned into right. That job's turned into a little bit of a stepping stone job here lately. Loyola Chicago. To be honest, I don't know that profile. Like to put it in Wren's, I like calling them profiles now that Wren did. I would have to research it. It's hard to know everybody, Jeff. Like there's so many names, and I only have time to watch one or two games every, well, 3 or 4 games a week. So, and that's like all I can fit in. So it's hard for me to know everybody, man. But I'm sure there are names out there I don't even know about that I'll be happy with.
She's 104, Shaggy says.
Yeah, I saw that. Well, she was freaking 98 the last time we seen her.
Bill Sheets. Bill Sheets. He's one of the, he's like us. He's living in dream world here. He says Missoula's wife is from West Virginia, so maybe they will come home. LOL.
Yeah.
We could only wish.
I mean,
man.
I say unfortunately because the Celtics have been so good this year. I mean, they're the number one overall seed in the East. Where they were a couple of days ago. Everybody looking up at them. So he's really done one of the best jobs you can possibly do. I'll tell you what, though, I'll take Brad Stevens, who just for whatever reason decided to not coach college basketball, move to the NBA, became a GM, and decided he wanted to do that. It's been really weird. It's one of the weirdest transitions ever. He could have been one of the greatest college basketball coaches ever if he wanted to be. That Butler run was just so good.
He's been sending you emails and you haven't been responding, he says.
I'm sorry, Mark. That's why you think I don't like you, huh? I'll tell you what, man. I'll check it out right now. Well, as soon as we get off here.
Patrick, to me, it's not even close. It's Bob Huggins. Who's the most polarizing personality, Huggins, Brown, or Gee? It's got to be Huggins right now.
Depends on what season we're in.
Yeah, right. That's why I said now. Billy Donovan would be cool, but
they're all
not happening.
Oh, yeah.
Shaggy thinks Gee is more polarizing.
I mean, there's really no wrong answer there.
Nope, there's not. Well, listen, before we call it quits, do you have anything else to add? We've been on here at the hour and 12 minutes. It's been a great live show, guys. It's been fun.
I really appreciate y'all, man. You guys come and show up for us every day we come on here, and it means a ton, man. So appreciate y'all for the super chats, everybody that sent one, which is call you guys out by name. Shaggy in West Virginia, I know you sent a couple. TRM Music sent a couple. Mark Painter, Pokemon Kid Entertainment, Conservative Nation, with a couple. There's a lot go off for you guys, and Jacob Yoho. Did we not read his again, Couz? I missed Jacob Yoho. You did read it?
I think I read it. Yeah. Let me make sure.
I missed his live yesterday.
Yeah, I read it. I read that one.
Okay. Just making sure.
Yeah. That because I followed up by saying, as long I followed up by saying I wish him well, hope he does well, as long as it's not against West Virginia.
Right.
And I hope he don't land in the Big 12. That was my response to it.
And also, guys, don't forget to like. There's still 122 of you guys in here. So if you could, before you leave, just like the video. And listen, I know everybody thinks, well, everybody else will do it. Man, if like 20 of you guys shared this video, it would really help set it off. Thank you guys for showing up. But if you all take the onus on yourself just to click copy or share to this video and share it to Facebook, to X, to anything, it really will. That helps us more than any dollar amount you can send. We need more subscribers, guys, for this show. We're trying to grow it. And it's hard, to be honest, when we're only doing West Virginia content because there's only so many of us out there. So we'd like to reach all the West Virginia fans we can reach.
1.8 million.
Yeah, boy.
The like button always helps if you're watching live or on the replay. It helps the algorithms. Comments help if you're watching on the replay as well. But we appreciate it. Again, all the support. Don't forget to go to Dutch Miller Auto for your automotive needs. We thank them for sponsoring us here on the show. We have nothing else to say, and we're done.